Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Serendipity Sunday. Serendipity Sunday. Okay, let's have some fun with the word serendipity, shall we? So let's just review the meaning. It's one of my favorite words. It's the occurrence or development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. That's one definition of the word serendipity. It goes back to 1754, I believe, when the word was created, having to do with Persian princes of Serendip. I think there were 3 Persian princes. What I should tell you is the definition that I'm going to use today is the fortuitous discovery of facts and circumstances whilst in the quest of knowledge of a different event. In other words, an accidental discovery of information that is quite valuable, but not necessarily to the original pursuit. As you know, by watching my channel, you are aware that I have looked into dozens of felonious homicide murders. Started out with the John Kennedy assassination, since that was a seminal event in my life. Then I looked at the Robert Kennedy assassination in Los Angeles. And then I looked at the Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger murders in Benedict Canyon. And simultaneously I looked at Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, who were murdered in a completely different zip code in a different neighborhood of Silver Lake off Los Feliz Boulevard near Griffith Park. It's a completely different part of Los Angeles. And what struck me was how the media never connects the dots with the LaBiancas and Sharon Tate. They never really do much work on trying to explain correlation, causation, with respect to the Benedict Canyon murders and this peculiar murder of Leno and Rosemary, who were living high on the hog. This happened to be living in Leno's mother's home, Karina, for a short interim period whilst they closed their purchase transaction of a horse farm in North San Diego County near Fallbrook, actually in the town of Vista, California, adjacent to Fallbrook. Now, what you should know is that it's because the media is in the concealment business. We have chemtrails actively going on right now while I'm recording this, like we have every day for the last 4 months. You'll notice that if you turn on your television to the news channel, they don't report anything to do with chemtrails. They tell you the weather's peculiar and the temperatures are low and the winds are high, but they don't in any way mention the fact that there's military planes flown out of Air Force bases in your province. They don't mention that. And the reason that chemtrails are not covered by newspapers, radio, television, or most social media is because they're accurate and truthful events, and you're not supposed to have anything to do with reality. You're supposed to live in the meta-universe, which is a phony, fake universe. And if you watch my channel, you know that our banking system is 100% fraudulent. Our investment system is 100% fraudulent. So if you have an investment advisor, so-called, which they're salespeople, it's a sales business. It's called asset gathering. They don't make commissions anymore. They make ongoing to infinity management fees for doing nothing. Because whilst they collect your fee, they're on to finding other people's assets to bill. That's the money model. The business model for the investment business is about locking up your assets and pretending and posturing to be knowledgeable about something that they are clueless for. There isn't a single person that works on Wall Street or runs a hedge fund or runs a private equity fund or manages your money or runs a mutual fund that knows what they're doing. Not one single person. And that's probably out of 100,000 people that are in that business of billing your pension account or your brokerage account that's on a wrap. It's called a wrap concept. It means they wrap all your money with their management fee, and they split that fee with their broker-dealer network, unless they are a registered investment advisor, which very few are because of the insurance coverages that are required. But essentially, you're dealing with a cabal of clowns, a bunch of clowns, clown alley. There are no investment advisors in America because there are no investments in America. There is no bankers in America. So all this fear porn about, oh my goodness, we're all going to die, the banking system is going to collapse. Hey, bring it on. Bring it on. The sooner the better. Because, you know, the banking system can be collapsed at any moment and at any time because it's always insolvent. It's based on a con game of your belief in the system. So if you believe in poppycock, you will have poppycock. Anyway, I want to remind my audience that when we had the worst banking collapse in the history of America, that was the Great Depression of 1929. That's when you have, like 3 years of negative growth in the economy, meaning unemployment and disasters. Don't forget, when we had hundreds of banks closed and private bankers diving out of windows onto the sidewalk like lemmings, like people lining up for a mandatory vax. When we had that going on, 1929, 1930, 1931, we built the world's largest water management facility in history, the Tennessee Valley Authority. We built the Boulder Dam, later renamed the Hoover Dam, one of the 7 wonders of the world. We built the Golden Gate Bridge, which the purpose of the Golden Gate Bridge, in case you didn't know, was to expand the military intelligence Presidio Army Base of San Francisco and connect it up with Marin County, Fort Cronkite, and Fort Baker, which became a bioweapons laboratory, if you didn't know, and have an underground facility built into those Marin headlands. There is a tunnel system in there that's quite magnificent. Most of it's off limits to the public. Part of it is open to the public. That's because they're so confident that you're so stupid that you won't think that there are other tunnel systems besides the ones that they show you on their guided tour. I've been on a few guided tours in my life of military facilities, and they are universally a joke. Just count the cars in the parking lot and then add up how many people you run into on the tour, and you will see that there is an irreconcilable difference between the tour that you were given and what really must go on in these underground facilities. They never show you 99% of the military complex because it's secret. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is the Golden Gate Bridge was a military project, but it still got built during the Great Depression. So we built the Golden Gate Bridge, we built the Boulder Dam, we built the Tennessee Valley Authority of damming up lakes and rivers in the Appalachian Mountains. We went to war with the Japanese, went to war with the Germans, and we had hundreds of banks going out of business. How is that possible? And I will answer, because anything's possible with the Wizard of Oz, because you see, they can create money out of thin air. They don't need collateral. They don't need collateralized lending. There is no balancing of the books in banking. There are no audits of banks. No bank is audited. I would know. I participated in at least, I've lost count, but a dozen fake bank audits. And when I say that I participated, I mean I did what I was told and I didn't get fired. I did, however, get in trouble and pulled aside, because I was always wanting to look at the collateral, because there is collateral in the system and I wanted to go look at it, and they wouldn't let me look at the collateral. I was allowed into vaults, but I wanted to go look at the collateral. Most of the securities are supposedly in New York City and Manhattan at Bankers Trust Company. You try to get access to Bankers Trust Company in New York, it's impossible. I don't even think the people who are employed at Bankers Trust Company have access to Bankers Trust Company, which would include Jeffrey Bezos, the guy who started selling books on the internet that became Amazon. He was a employee at Bankers Trust Company in New York. Hey, so guess who else was an employee there? William Egan Colby's second wife, Shelley Shelton. She was the vice president at Bankers Trust. That's why I'm calling today's video Serendipity Sunday. Because whilst I was looking into all these murders, like John F. Kennedy or Sharon Tate or Lena LaBianca or the Zodiac, so-called, because there was no Zodiac killer. I'm just here to, sorry to pop your bubble. There was no Zodiac killer. There were killings, but not by any Zodiac, okay? I mean, it sounds good for television. It's like saying there's Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger is loose. Nightmare on Elm Street. Remember the Jose Menendez murder? 722 North Elm Drive, Beverly Hills, 90210. Little takeoff on Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. Jose Menendez, killed by the CIA, along with his wife Kitty. He's in the porn industry. He knows O.J. Simpson. His employer at the time of his death held $15 million of life insurance. And Dominic Dunn of Vanity Fair is going to tell you that Lyle and Eric Menendez had financial motives to kill their parents. Nothing like his employers did. His employers had $15 million of tax-free life insurance. Of course, I'm referring to Andrei Vajna and what was the other character's name? Anyway, Andrei Vajka's real name is Andres Weidman. He's Jewish. And the other guy is a Palestinian, Mario Kassar. Mario Kassar and Andres Weidman held $15 million of life insurance on Jose Menendez, who used to assign O.J. Simpson's paychecks when he was the chief financial officer at Hertz Rent-A-Car. And O.J. Simpson is neighbors with Oliver Silverstein Stone. It's 2 houses away. Oliver Stone lives on a cul-de-sac, at the end of a cul-de-sac. The back's right up to Rockingham and Ashbury, where O.J. used to live, where he parked the white Bronco at the curb. That's a baseball throw away from Oliver Silverstein Stone's tennis court. And Oliver Silverstein Stone works closely with Mario Kassar and Andrew Vajna to produce his movie The Doors, which didn't cover the Vietnam War and didn't cover George Morrison, who was Jim Morrison's father, who was a rear admiral in the United States Navy in charge of the fleet in Tonkin Bay when the Vietnam War was started. You'd think Oliver Stone would cover that, since he pretends to be so concerned about the Vietnam War. He glosses over that in his film The Doors. It's the single most relevant fact of Jim Morrison was the fact that his father was the namesake for the Bay of Tonkin incident, which never happened in real life. And there's Oliver Stone making a film that conceals that fact. I mean, ignores it. And when you ignore facts, you're concealing them. And that's the purpose of Oliver Stone. Okay? That's a serendipitous discovery. Does Oliver Stone know O.J. Simpson? Probably. It would be hard to believe that he didn't know him. I mean, he does live very close to him. He's on a different street, but he is a baseball throw away. And he knows people that work with O.J. I mean, Mario Kassar and Andrew Vajna know O.J. Simpson. How come Oliver Stone wouldn't? Oliver Stone knows Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary lived at 10106 Sunbrook Drive, right below the murder scene where Abigail Folger bled out on the lawn. Oliver Stone has been to that address. He's visited that home on St. Patrick's Day, Sunday afternoon. March 17th, 1996. So we know Oliver Stone knows a long time, decades loyal soldier of the CIA, Timothy Leary, and goes and spends a Sunday afternoon with him at the Sharon Tate murder scene. Oliver Stone. Oliver Silverstein Stone. Do you think that that's a random coincidence? So Oliver Stone knows Timothy Leary, and he knows Andrew Vajna, Andres Weidman. He knows Mario Casar. They know Jose Menendez. Does Oliver Stone know Jose Menendez? When Jose Menendez got into the film business, he was in the porn end of things. He was working with Noam Bloom on pornography on behalf of Mario Casar and Andrew Vajna. So if Oliver Stone wanted to be in the porn industry, for sure he would know Jose Menendez. But you know that Jose Menendez attended many meetings at Carolco Pictures, and Oliver Stone attended many meetings at Carolco Pictures. So it's entirely likely that even though Jose Menendez had a Canoga Park office where the porn business was going on, he would also go over to West Hollywood to have meetings at Carolco Pictures, and he would go to Studio City, and he would go to meetings at RCA and Time Warner and Universal Studios, and Oliver Stone definitely went to meetings at all of those locations as well. So it is highly likely that Oliver Stone and Jose Menendez would see each other in the elevator or the lobby or the reception area, if not at parties, if not in conference rooms that were used to promote The Doors or JFK or porn for Noam Bloom through Live Entertainment, which is a subsidiary of Carolco Pictures, which is an acronym of a CIA company in Panama, Central America, where Oliver Stone produced a film called Salvador. And you would think that when he was visiting Timothy Leary on St. Paddy's Day back in 1986, you would think that he would pay tribute to Abigail Folger, since she and her mother were beneficiaries of a land trust from El Salvador. I don't even know if Oliver Stone is smart enough to know that the key to the Abigail Folger murder was that they were from El Salvador, that her grandparents were from El Salvador, and they were ambassadors in San Francisco to El Salvador, meaning they worked for the CIA and the State Department, and that they received monthly paychecks from rents that are collected from military tenants in El Salvador, and that you could make a film about El Salvador and not understand the colonial rental contracts that go on in places like Belize and Guatemala and El Salvador and Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica. Why don't you do a film, Oliver Stone, on colonialism in El Salvador? Unbelievable. Anyway, the reason I call this serendipitous is that when you look into dozens of homicides in Hollywood or in the clandestine world, which would include San Francisco, which would include Havana, Cuba, which would include New York City, which would include Los Angeles, greater Los Angeles, which would include port facilities throughout the whole world, which would include Lucky Luciano, who was murdered in Naples, which is a port city in Italy. When you look at murder most foul, and you look at it where you find it, like in Dallas, Texas, which is a port facility, or Huey Newton, former president of the Hells Angels, in the Port of Oakland, a port city, or John F. Kennedy's head blown off in Dallas, Texas, a port facility, you will see commonalities. Let me give you an example. Let's take Conrad Hilton, who I believe is from Arizona. And he eventually created a chain of hotels called the Hilton Hotel Resort Chain International Hilton Hotels. Let me give you some examples of how popularized Hilton Hotel was. So, back in 1958, we had this thing called the Cuban Revolution, where Fidel Castro and his brother, Raul, were ushered into power by a CIA-trained military force, paramilitary group, trained in Guatemala by the CIA and Frank Sturgis, whose real name is Finarini, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But anyway, Frank Sturgis aside, you have a CIA-trained military force that overthrows the CIA puppet leader Batista. General Batista is not killed. He is not assassinated, but he's shunted aside. And on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, 1959, Fidel Castro is declared the new leader of Cuba by means of victory of the revolutionary forces of the Cuban people, who have risen up over the fascist dictator, General Batista. Well, do you know before they could get the office remodeled where General Batista, made his political headquarters, before that could be done, Fidel Castro had to set up his shop in Havana, Cuba, right? So where does he decide to do that? Well, he went to the Hilton Hotel. That's where he went, to Conrad Hilton's hotel, and they set up the political offices of the new Prime Minister of Cuba at the Hilton Hotel. That's January 1st, 1959. Okay. Now, is that serendipity? No. But I'm not done yet. Okay, so then I can continue on this Fidel Castro psychops. I mean, it's hilarious because it's just on April 15th, tax filing date, he travels to New York City, where he's treated like a rock star, and he spends 10 days, I believe, in New York City. He meets with Richard Nixon for 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and he just eats hot dogs in the Bronx, watches the New York Yankees play baseball. He's wearing his battle fatigues like he personally, fought the war that was fought by CIA-trained troops. The people who trained the Bay of Pigs invasion trained the Fidel Castro army. Does that surprise you? You see, there was never any communism in Cuba. There was never any socialism in Cuba. There was only maritime law under the United States Navy and U.S. Marines. That's all there's ever been in Cuba. That's all there's ever been in America. America is under the same paradigm as Cuba is. The United States has traditionally received more benefits from the anthropology bankers who create the illusion that democracy leads to a richer world. No, it doesn't. It's whatever a bunch of perverts in a conference room decide. That's what leads to a richer world or a poorer world. Right now we got a world where they rain down toxic waste on you on a daily basis. I would call that a polluted world. And that's coming from, and I'm holding responsible, bankers for doing that, since that money is not in any budget that I'm aware of. But they're doing it anyway because they can create money from nothing. Anyway, let me continue on with my Conrad Hilton story. So, moving fast forward a little bit on the calendar, the next example is when we had the Beatles psychops and the Tavistock Institute social engineered music writing that I think Paul McCartney didn't do. And the Beatles broke up in 1969, and then quick like a bunny rabbit, bang bang, Paul McCartney got married to a Jewish girl by the name of Linda Epstein. And then John Lennon immediately, quick like a bunny rabbit, got married to a Japanese nobility class banking daughter, Yoko Ono. Her fourth marriage, John Lennon's second marriage. And they got married in Gibraltar, and then they, quick like a bunny, returned to Paris, France, whereupon they got into some kind of a rental car and drove up to Amsterdam, Holland, and they checked into a Hilton Hotel for their bed-in for peace, which followed 2 days after the release of Power to the People, right on. And that is in a Hilton Hotel in Amsterdam, Holland. So Fidel Castro uses the Hilton Hotels to set up his new revolutionary government, and John Lennon uses the Hilton Hotel to set up his bed-in for peace. I'm not done yet. Then let's continue out a little bit. After we had the moon landings, and then we had people who disputed that the moon landings were legitimate, out of nowhere comes this guy named Bart Sibel, who's a real tall fellow, quite audacious. He carries a Bible with him, and he has $5,000 of cash money that he wants to give to Buzz Aldrin if he would swear on the Bible that he did not walk on the moon, or that he would swear that he did walk on the moon. And Buzz Aldrin doesn't want to swear on the Bible. And Bart Sibel deduces from that it's because he doesn't want to go to hell for lying to God. Well, I don't know about any of that, but I can tell you that that event where allegedly, Buzz Aldrin punched Bart Sibel in the face in front of some cameras, and that while it created a commotion and the Beverly Hills Police Department got involved, there was no arrest made, and no charges were brought, and there was no harm, no foul. You do realize that occurred at a Conrad Hilton Beverly Hills Hotel. Right. So in other words, where we had the Apollo 11 moon landing incident where we have Buzz Aldrin versus a obvious crisis actor, CIA Bart Sibel, who's pandering to all the non-believers of the moon landing, which would include me, because I am a non-believer. But the point is, I don't need Bart Sibel to do my thinking for me. I'm entirely capable of doing my own research on that, okay? But the point is that that's a CIA event, and it's done at a Hilton Hotel. Now, I'll just stop there. I can go on, because believe me, there's more, okay? But my point is, what do you think the mathematical probability is that Fidel Castro chooses Conrad Hilton's hotel to set up his revolutionary government, and that John Lennon uses a Hilton Hotel in Amsterdam to do a bed-in for peace, which has to be a CIA scripted intelligence community honeypot operation? And then you have an Apollo 11 incident occurring years after the moon landing are reported in a Hilton Hotel. And all three are in a Hilton Hotel. Now, I should add a fourth, because there's a fourth. Francis Gary Powers, upon his release from Russian prison, is then invited to the annual Christmas party for Lockheed in Los Angeles, which, guess what, is always held at the Beverly Hills Conrad Hilton Hotel. The Beverly Hilton Hotel hosts the Lockheed, which everybody knows, it's a CIA corporation, 100% in charge of all technical surveillance on the planet Earth under CIA supervision. Lockheed Martin has its annual party in Beverly Hills at the Hilton Hotel. What's the chance that you have 4 CIA events and they're all hosted at the same hotel chain? One's in Havana Hilton Hotel, one's at the Amsterdam Hilton Hotel, and 2 are at the Beverly Hills Hilton Hotel in the case of the Bart Sibel, Buzz Aldrin punch-out. and the Gary Francis Powers, where he ends up meeting Alan Dulles and that Luciferian engineer, I forgot his name, who created the SR-71 spy plane, who my friend who flew the plane, he worshipped, which comical. So I had a CIA career nutcase of a friend of mine. He worshipped two people, Chuck Yeager, who lived in Grass Valley, which is not too far from Beale Air Force Base. And there actually is a dirt road named after Chuck Yeager called Chuck Yeager Road, which I've been on that road. It's mostly gravel. Part of it's paved. Most of it is not. They're not looking for tourists to drive on it. There is a automatic weapons gun range along that road, which is pretty scary. It's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. Yeah, I was afraid that, a bullet might, ricochet off and hit me while I'm on the road. It's pretty scary. Anyway, that's a pretty close proximity to the Air Force Base. Anyway, Chuck Yeager, and the other was the Kelly Johnson, the father of the SR-71. Okay? And he worshipped these guys. And he met both of those guys eventually, later in his career. And I'm happy to report to you that upon meeting Chuck Yeager, he told me he was completely disillusioned by him and that the guy was really a jerk. He thought he was personally a jerk and an asshole, and that he no longer worshipped this icon known as Chuck Yeager, the guy who, broke the speed record. And he met Kelly Johnson also. He ended up working as a test pilot for the SR-71 and SR-72 that came later down in Palmdale. I cannot tell you what he told me about Kelly Johnson. It's too inflammatory for this video. But what I'm happy to tell you is all of these delusional soldiers for the clandestine services that go in to take their mission seriously and think they're doing important work, that they're stopping communism and that they're going to hide behind the American flag. They work for NATO. They work for NATO. And they work as terrorists. They're terrorists against humanity. That's the only kind of social engineering that they're involved with. They're not protecting anybody from anything. We don't have a democracy. We don't have a constitution. We don't have a Bill of Rights. So I don't know what you think you're protecting. If you're in the military, they are disrespecting human rights on a daily basis when they dump chemtrails from the sky. Or if you fly an SR-71 over a church in El Salvador or Nicaragua and you blow out all the windows, you are disrespecting people's constitutional right to practice their religion. You're disrespecting that. If you fly an SR-71 over a downtown financial district and blow out the windows to those office buildings, frightening people, you are disrespecting their right to peace and freedom and tranquility. I got another pilot plane flying over my roof right now. He's directing the chemtrails above via the home base. Believe me, if I had a surface-to-air missile right now, I would push the button on that. Because I would say that every 10 minutes I have an obnoxious piece of junk airplane like that harassing my town. Apparently, I'm in an important part of the San Francisco Bay Area that disseminates pollution throughout all 7 counties nearby. Anyway, I'm going to tell you, on Serendipity Sunday, you'll see that the Hilton Hotel comes up quite a bit. You will see that they use the same tactic. Oh, like he's even coming closer. I guess he can hear me. Hey, why don't you land that plane while I have a fist fight in the park? Let's go have a fist fight in the park. I'll tie one hand behind my back so it'll be a fair fight. What a sissy. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you is that another example of serendipity is the Greenfield Ranch, 5,600 acres of undeveloped property in Mendocino County. And this is where the People's Temple was incubated for Jim Jones, the People's Temple. This is where Charlie Miles Maddox was sent. This is where Susan Atkins was sent the next year. This is where Leonard Lake and Charles Ng were sent for training before they murdered 25 people in a serial killing cremation thing event in the 1980s. This is where Murder, She Wrote. This is where Murder, She Wrote was filmed, in the general proximity of the Greenfield Ranch. This is where the Rainbow Colony cult was created, where Angela Lansbury filmed Cabot Cove. There was the Rainbow Colony, which raised that little girl that we all know, who's not a little girl anymore. I think she's 51 years old now. Gosh, I forgot her name already. Johnny Depp's partner for a while. Well, I forgot her name. Yeah, I don't know that that was her real name anyway. Her name is Jewish. She has a Jewish name because she's Jewish. Timothy Leary and is her godfather, which is peculiar because Jewish people don't need godparents, do they? I mean, isn't that if you believe in Jesus, you have a godfather? You're Christian? That's part of the subterfuge. You're Jewish, but you have Allen Ginsberg and Timothy Leary as your godfathers. Right. Allen Ginsberg pops up serendipitously so many places I've lost count. Allen Ginsberg shows up with Timothy Leary at the Hitchcock Institute, also known as the Millbrook Institute, known as the Hudson Valley Mansion. Allen Ginsberg reappears in Haight-Ashbury with Abigail Folger's mother, again working with Timothy Leary in San Francisco. Allen Ginsberg, a Jewish poet. He then takes a leave of absence to go to Chicago and to lead 200 people into a park to protest the Vietnam War. Allen Ginsberg, there's all kinds of arrests made, but Allen Ginsberg, a Jewish poet from New Jersey, is not arrested. He's like the only person that's not arrested. Even Bobby Seale got arrested. Bobby Seale did not get convicted, except of contempt of court. But my point is that Allen Ginsberg then reappears when Fidel Castro visited New York City. There's Allen Ginsberg visiting Fidel Castro. And when Yoko Ono and John Lennon moved the Bed-In for Peace to Montreal, Canada, Timothy Leary flies to Montreal to visit the Bed-In, and so does Allen Ginsberg, the Jewish poet from New Jersey. Why is that? Why is Allen Ginsberg hanging out with John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and he's hanging out in San Francisco for the Haight-Ashbury Project, and he's hanging out with Fidel Castro, and he's hanging out with... Who else is he hanging out with? I mean, he pops up. He's probably at the My Lai massacre, for all I know. Anything to do with the CIA, Allen Ginsberg is there. And Timothy Leary is there. Okay, then let's talk about another thing. The Idyllwild Resort. The Idyllwild is a wilderness property in Riverside County in the mountains above Lake Elsinore and above the town of Hemet. It's in the middle of nowhere. It is in the boondocks. Okay? It's east of Orange County, and it is way up in the mountains. And they even have a suicide rock up there. Timothy Leary had a ranch there. I think he had like 80 acres of land. Then Ron and Phyllis Patterson, they had a house there. They were trained there, and then they set up a decades-long Renaissance pleasure fair in Marin County, first at China Camp and then moved to Black Point, Nevada, off Atherton Avenue, where they ran the Pleasure Fair, which they employed Leonard Lake, who was a serial killer, who became a serial killer. And he worked for them. And they're running a CI operation in Marin County. But they were trained in Los Angeles, at Culver City and at the Idyllwild. Now, why was that serendipitous? Well, Timothy Leary taught at that facility and had a ranch at that facility. The Renaissance Fair operators had a home at that facility. Okay? Guess who else had a vacation cabin there? Okay? Well, my last video where we had Jennifer Maxwell and her second 21-year older husband, age 60, Tip Roeder of Coldwater Canyon, Beverly Hills, and Jennifer Maxwell from Blue Hawaii and Elvis Presley fame, they had a cabin in Idyllwild. What do you think the mathematical probability is that you could have a Hollywood actress with a intelligence Los Angeles police detective turned lawyer having free housing in Idyllwild, along with Ron and Phyllis Patterson of the Renaissance Pleasure Fair and Timothy Leary, a guru LSD tune-in, turn-on, drop-out maven for LSD CIA, in Idyllwild? That's 4 for 4. That's 4 people who resided in a CIA training facility known as Idyllwild. That's serendipitous. It's also not a surprise because the CIA has no imagination. They do the same thing, rinse and repeat, over and over. So I got John Lennon, I got Allen Ginsberg, I got Timothy Leary. I got them popping up in the same places, in the Hilton hotels, all over the world. That's my point. I hope you enjoyed my video. I'm sorry I ran long. Have a great rest of your weekend. Take care. Please like and subscribe and share my videos. I am shadow banned. Take care now.